What's the state of your website? If you're looking for a new digital experience platform, or DXP, to run your digital experiences, I have the book for you. The Agile Brand Guide to Digital Experience Platforms is part of my best-selling series of MarTech books. In this book, I explore and demystify DXPs and look at the roles a digital experience platform should play, the different types on the market, as well as how to initially evaluate platforms, then how to best implement a DXP once you've selected it. The book also features a foreword from Rupali Jain, Chief Product Officer at leading DXP provider Optimizely, as well as several other thought leaders in the industry. Learn more and get a copy in print or digital now by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Hi, this is Greg Kihlstrom. Welcome to the Agile World podcast, where we discuss customer experience, employee experience, and transformation in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, a blueprint for creating an experience-led organization, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the value of a holistic digital experience. Too often, organizations spend time optimizing a few channels to make sure that they're performing well, but they fail to look at the bigger picture. Customer experience is a key differentiator in today's competitive marketplace, and organizations that embrace digital experience as more than the sum of its parts will get ahead and stay ahead. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Eric Stahl, SVP of Digital Experience at Salesforce. First, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and what you do at Salesforce?
Thanks, Greg. It's great to be here. I've been at Salesforce for almost 12 years. I joined next month, it'll be 12 years. Prior to that, I did enterprise software at a database company called Informix and a middleware company called BEA Systems. So I've been in this enterprise software space for a long time. Most of my background was doing product marketing. I've had a few twists and turns over the years. I spent some time in London. I spent some time in investor relations explaining what these crazy enterprise software products are. But for the most part, product marketing. And then about a year ago, Stephanie Buscemi, our CMO at Salesforce, asked if I would take on our digital team and kind of run and optimize the current site, but more importantly, reimagine the entire thing and see what we could come up with. So that's what I'm working on now.
That's great. Well, congrats on the 12 years at Salesforce and as well as the new role. So let's talk about that holistic digital experience and define it a little bit. So, how do you define this great experience and what's its relationship to the overall customer experience?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I have the great pleasure of working with our COO and head of product, Brett Taylor, who comes to us having been one of the core inventors of Google Maps and was the CTO at Facebook and founded a company called Quip, which we acquired. And Brett has been a really interesting voice in all of this. From his perspective, it's not a website redesign. He doesn't want us to just think about this in terms of the website. He wants us to really dig deep on a data strategy that actually builds a single source of truth for all of our prospects and customers, and then using that data to drive a more personalized experience across marketing, commerce, meaning just buying our products online, through our sales experience, through our support experience, through our product experience, through our events, and really any other touch point. And so it gets much bigger and more complex than thinking of this as a website redesign. This is
Yeah.
not, a bunch of HTML pages linking to each other. This is a deep infrastructure lift. I think of it more as an application than a website with complex data on the back end, complex personalization in the middle tier, and then all of these points of interaction, whether it's through our products or through our website or through our sales team or support agent, or whether you're showing up at one of our events.
Yeah. And so when you're looking at this, what's your approach to measurement? So, because you're talking about a lot of different things. You are talking about individual channels, but more how they tie to one another. So what is measurement and what does success look like in terms of measurement?
So that's a big question. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I'll just give you a couple of quick thoughts. One is um, the digital experience is not just sales, right? And that's a common mistake where you're just optimizing for traffic and leads and pipeline and new business, right? And that marketers can just exclusively focus on that because they think that's their job, and in some ways
Yeah.
it is. But sales is only kind of one part of the customer journey as they're going through the process of finding and trying and buying your products. How they onboard as a new customer is a really critical thing. How they get ongoing support and enablement and training is really important. How they discover and buy kind of add-on products. How they, just are overall, how they feel about you as a company
Yeah.
will ultimately drive your success or not. And so when you say, how do you measure this? Yes, there's kind of the sales driven, kind of more traditional lead funnel side of things. But we are trying to really dig in on more foundational concepts around CSAT and adoption and renewals and things that kind of just tell us that the customer is being successful. And if they're successful just by virtue of our business model of subscriptions, we know we will be successful. So I hope that's
Yeah.
not too vague, but that's kind of how we're
Yeah,
thinking.
no, I think it's to your point. It's a big question, and I'm sure there's measurements at all kinds of levels. But at the end of the day, agreed. It's about that big picture. What about you mentioned a lot of things that there's digital components to them, but there's also offline behaviors. How do you approach that when you know that there's going to be some sort of offline to digital or vice versa behavior? What's what's the approach to making sure that that's as seamless as possible?
So we are a CRM company. So fortunately, the idea of having customer data is something near and dear to us. And we
Yeah.
want to lead by example. And so there's some interesting use cases that we've come up with. For example, um, our CEO told this interesting story where he went into um, a telephone network provider store. He needed a new iPhone for whatever reason. And he went in
Yeah.
there and they took his name and they put him in this queue and he waited forever. And he asked, I wonder if they know that I'm the CEO of a company that buys $100 million of products from them every year. And if they did,
Right.
would they be able to like maybe, you know, expedite the situation and get him a phone?
Right.
And it's a really simple example. And he was just using it to illustrate a point that they weren't able to connect the dots between, here's this guy who influences a huge amount of business for them, but they're not able to recognize that signal when he comes walking into one of their stores and kind of uh,
Yeah.
act accordingly. to be honest. And so if you think about that, it's just a data issue and a kind of a process issue that most companies suffer from because they have silos of customer data scattered all over the place. And so
Yeah.
we've been asking ourselves, like, how are we doing that to our customers? Like, we have MVP programs, some of our best customers, our most enthusiastic users. They know the product inside and out. They speak at our events. They answer questions on our community. Like, these are like the most tried and true hardcore Salesforce trailblazers.
Yeah.
And when they call support, like, do we have the processes in place to kind of know that, hey, this is an MVP, like, get them to tier 3 support right away? And again, that's just like a, a way of illustrating, like, are we connecting all these data points uh, to get the right people to the right places at the right time? So we're busy
Yeah.
digging in. I mean, that's like a very specific one. Other ones that are so obvious, but I think they elude most companies. Like, when someone comes to the website, do we know what products they have bought? And are we kind of serving up an experience, whether it's free training or release information or an upcoming event coming to their city? Like, are we really serving all that up to them in the way that we should be? And
Yeah.
even at Salesforce, the answer is no, we're not, but we're working hard to figure that out and get that in place as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we did this show, you and I talked a little bit, and our conversation touched on a point that I wrote about in one of my books called The Agile Brand. It's this concept of evolution versus revolution. So, with so many organizations going through what they're terming transformation right now, how can you know if an evolutionary or a revolutionary change is needed?
Well, at Salesforce, we're now 21 years old, and the infrastructure. Well, we've grown very quickly. To
Yeah.
We're going to do 20 billion in sales this year, so I think it's a bit unusual, but we've grown into this huge company over the last 20 years, and so we have infrastructure and we have analytics that were put in place many years ago. Probably not 20 years ago, but some of it might be, trace their origins 5 or 10 or 15 years back, which are
Yeah.
not necessarily how we would build those things today. And so you do get to a point where it becomes so deeply embedded in the company. I'll give you an example. We have very complex analytics for how we run a lot of different parts of the business. And the model hasn't evolved as much as I would have thought it should have over the last few years. And I've thought a lot about it, and it's because the organization, like, human beings, are organized around this model.
Yeah.
It's embedded in the code of our analytics infrastructure. It's really hard to evolve or change the model. And so, to answer your question, I think you just have to get to a point where every once in a while you hit the reset button and you make the investment to do a bigger transformation, because you just can't incrementally evolve your way forward. And so I think we're very much looking at a larger transformation where we're questioning the infrastructure, the tech stack, the architecture, and all of the code that's evolved over all the years, which has a lot of intellectual property tied up in it, but it's also kind of holding us back from kind of bringing a beginner's mind to how we should do these things in 2020. So,
Yeah.
I think every once in a while you just have to hit the reset button and do a bigger transformation.
Yeah. No, agreed. So yeah, let's talk a little bit. Let's follow that thread a little bit to the operationalizing experience. So to me, it seems we've all read the statistics. Everyone understands that treating customers well, they buy more often, so on and so forth. Same thing with employees. If you treat them well, they're going to stay longer. So it seems like everyone kind of understands this, and yet so few companies really deliver on this. Why do you think that's true? I mean, what's holding companies back from really delivering on something that they know to be true?
Um, my experience is that companies ship their org charts, and
Yeah.
they impose their org chart on the customer and on the customer experience. And I think it's a natural thing. You stand up a team, you tell them to go do something, and they go do it. And you stand up another team, and you tell them to do something, and they go do it. And so you end up with all these silos and this fragmented customer experience. And so the hard part is to create this horizontal framework that everyone has to plug into that drives continuity of the customer experience while still allowing these teams to have the autonomy they need to do what they need to do. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah, definitely.
things like, a design system with one common brand expression that everyone has to adopt, or single sign-on, or a federated data strategy that kind of pulls all these pieces together. Like those things don't just happen organically. Somebody has to be on point to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, do you see that as and I'm sure every organization can be different in this, but do you see that as a team owning experience and then others working around it, or because I've seen a lot of different ways this work, but maybe at Salesforce, how does that happen when you obviously have different teams that are responsible for different
Yeah,
aspects of a product, and yet to your point, they all do need to converge at some point while doing their own jobs, right?
yeah. I think so. My job is to think about the customer experience, and I have to work with the marketing teams, the sales teams, the commerce teams, the support teams, the product teams, and give them a framework that they're going to plug into. So, there's just you're not going to just have one big monolithic thing. It needs to be, uh, a distributed effort.
Yeah.
I also would highly recommend top level executive sponsorship. The only reason I think I can succeed in this job is because I have the CEO and the CIO, COO saying, go make it happen. And when we
Yeah.
tell these teams that they need to plug into this framework, that there's going to be, both a carrot and a stick. It can't be optional. And
Yeah.
so we're going to help everyone, and we're going to try to get them excited about the vision and sell them on all the exciting benefits of the better customer experience. But you also need a stick that says, you have to do it by this date. I'm also enlisting the help of legal. So the more privacy and accessibility laws that roll out, the harder it is to operate in a highly distributed manner. And
Yeah.
so the olden days of like anyone can spin up a website or a domain or a subdomain or a tech stack, and you have no idea what your employees are putting out there,
Right.
also creates a huge legal exposure because these things all need to comply with GDPR and CCPA and all the accessibility laws. And like I don't think
Yeah.
people do it intentionally, but they're spinning things up that they have no idea what the requirements are, or how to how to live up to them. So
Yeah, I mean,
having legal help is another just another play in the playbook.
yeah, things are changing quickly enough on on all those fronts. Are there processes or systems, whether that's using Agile or a project management system, or how have you found things that do help with the cohesion on teams and stuff like that?
So it's funny you ask. We are in the midst of a pilot to move all of marketing into Agile, which our tech and product teams already use.
Yeah,
We have a internally built uh, tool. It's kind of like Jira, but it's our own kind of built-on Salesforce version of that
gotcha.
that we are piloting. And so, yes, it has to be. Uh, you need a methodology to have these kind of empowered but distributed teams, each managing their own backlog, each accountable to some business function, but also done in a coordinated way where they all come together to produce some, end result that makes sense. So
Yeah.
we are definitely moving in that direction, and hopefully a year from now, all of marketing will be leveraging Agile. But
Oh, that's
that's a
that's
big
exciting.
that's
Yeah.
a big transformation for us. It has huge impact on um, the training and enablement piece. It doesn't just happen by itself. It also will expose some staffing challenges where we might be over in some areas and under in certain other areas. But yes, a lot of us are really excited about that concept.
That's great. That's great. Well, one last question before we wrap up here. What working for a technology company that produces its own platform? What technologies or platforms are you most excited about when you're thinking about this holistic customer experience and everything? What do you see coming down the pike that shows a lot of promise?
So the one of the bigger trends right now is CDP, Customer Data Platform. It really is, the holy grail of building a customer 360. Um, I think that's a space to watch,
Yeah,
right? Where we can aggregate prospect and customer data. We can stitch together a single view. We can create segments and audiences based on whatever attributes. And then we can activate those segments and audiences out through different channels. That's a big deal. And that's what every company needs to get to. The market is still early. We are working on our own CDP. From our point of view, it's just kind of consumer level CRM. And so we're working on a product in that space that we will be using internally.
yeah,
And beyond that, it's all we have every other piece of MarTech under the
yeah,
sun. From we use Google Marketing Platform and BigQuery and Optimizely and all those kinds of tools as well. But I think
yeah.
the data platform is the next big shoe to drop.
And so, for those that are less familiar with it, could you distinguish between what a CDP does and a CRM?
Yeah, so CRM kind of comes largely, not entirely, but largely out of the B2B world where you kept track of accounts and contacts and leads and opportunities. That's like the traditional Salesforce CRM world.
Yeah,
Some people look to their email platforms. Like we bought a company called Exact Target, which is a huge email platform. Some people call that a CRM, but it's really heavily focused on just one channel like email.
yeah,
Um, I think that the move towards CDP is, first of all, it's just data. It's channel agnostic, which is a really important characteristic. It's massively scalable, so that you can manage tens of millions or hundreds of millions, or maybe billions uh, of contacts, human
yeah,
beings in the system. It allows you to federate data from a lot of different backend resources. It allows you to do segmentation and activation of those audiences, and it allows you to do analytics to just understand, who are these people, and what kind of insights can you derive from a centralized data repository like that.
Great. Thanks. Well, Eric, thanks for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
Well, I am posting updates on LinkedIn, so anyone listening is welcome to connect to me on LinkedIn. But I'm also aspiring to move those updates over to our website, where I can post content and hopefully drive a lot more traffic to our site through that. So for now, LinkedIn, but that might change over time.
Great. Well, again, I'd like to thank Eric Stahl, SVP Digital Experience at Salesforce, for joining the show. To learn more about both customer and employee experience, I recommend you go to my website at gregkillstrom.com and make sure to check out my latest book, The Center of Experience. More information is available on my website or wherever the book is available, like Amazon. Thanks for listening to The Agile World with Greg Killstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Killstrom. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, from my website at theagile.world or on Amazon or other retailers. Until next week, stay agile.